Hey folks, with us today, Stefan Wirth, co-founder of SwiftBrief. Stefan, super happy to have you.
Thanks for having me.
Cool. So you have a bit of a different starter story for SwiftBrief as you bought it and not built it from scratch. How did you make that decision?
So we've been doing projects from scratch for 6 months, like a year before. And I think what we've noticed is that we tend to basically have a hard time, to find something that people really want. I think that's a common problem. And there's something that people not only want, but also are willing to pay for, and that can reach a certain scale. So when someone on Twitter, Rigo is a guy who originally built it, he basically reached out and said, I want to sell this product. I was like, yeah, it looks like it is a big enough market, and it looks like you already put a lot of work into it, and why not try it? And I think it's something, taking out that risk of going from 0 to 1 and building something that doesn't have a market. I think that's very interesting. And that's just our kind of, sandbox project to try that out and see if that is actually something that we like to do. And if, that is like a good fit for us. And I think that's kind of, what it is right now, like more of a sandbox to give that a try.
Okay, so can you tell us a bit of what SwiftBrief actually does?
So SwiftBrief is a content brief generator. It helps SEO agencies to basically delegate, or it basically helps companies via agencies mostly to delegate their content efforts, like content writing at scale. And it basically removes the manual labor that people, do now to pull together content briefs, which form the basis of an article, right? Like if you have a writer and you want to get an article written, it's good if you can provide a lot of context about the brand and a lot of detail around the research and keywords and things like that. And that's just what we basically automate for you. And then we create an outline that can be filled out by a writer. That's what it does. Yeah.
Got it. And then maybe going back to the acquisition part, because I think especially like in the last year or two, it felt like it's getting more and more popular to buy instead of build, even for bootstrappers. So where did you actually find that deal? Just like via Twitter, or did you find on like something like MicroAcquire, or I think they're now called acquire.com? Or how did you get in contact with the SwiftBrief founder?
Yeah, so that was just on Twitter. It wasn't even that I was looking. I think I just came across it, and I came across it like quite late. So he just tweeted like, yeah, I have something else now, and I don't have time to fully like commit to SwiftBrief and put enough time into it. And I came across that tweet 2 weeks later or something, and he had already like shut it down. And the customer that he had one paying customer, but he had more users. He refunded because he started with a lifetime deal, and so he basically shut it down. And then I reached out too late, and after that he didn't have anyone that wanted it at that point. So I was like, okay, let's still kind of make this happen because I think it's worth a try.
So it was basically an off-market deal, meaning he wasn't actively trying to sell, but you just saw, okay, it looks like he's abandoning the project or isn't that interested in it, so it might be a good ask to see if he's willing to sell.
Well, I mean, he wasn't selling it, yes. And I guess, calling it acquisition is a bit of a stretch because we did pay some money for it, right? But it wasn't like a lot.
Not a
it
major
was mainly
one,
like taking over the domain and like paying for the domain. And then the rest, he basically just was like, yeah, he's a marketer, so he's not a technical guy. So the code base was buggy, and he didn't want to go through all the effort and like listing it on MicroAcquire and something like that. And MicroAcquire, I guess, is also more interested if you have more customers, right? I think they have some criteria of what you can list. And so he didn't want to go through that trouble, but he wanted someone to kind of, give it in someone's hands that he thinks those are good hands that can take care of the product and kind of grow it and like realize its potential. And that's kind of what he, I guess, saw with us, right? And so that's, he was willing to just give it away, basically, right?
Understood. And now you have a couple of customers and a couple of €100 in MRR. How did you, like, what were the first things you did after acquiring it to get there? So, like, how did you take it over and, like, restart the whole thing?
So in the beginning, it was a lot of technical setup because I said it was already taken down, right? So it was like creating the infrastructure again and like redoing the CMS that's powering a lot of the landing page and things like that. So that was like a bit of work. And then what I did was I actually recently made a video on this. I went out and asked the people on Twitter that follow me, kind of like, okay, who could be a customer of this tool, right? Like I went out and I was like, who uses SEO and who is interested in like a tool that helps them kind of scale that content marketing effort. And I got a couple people reaching out, and from out of those people, one of them was Flavio, who is now for the tool our kind of marketing partner. So he is basically the ideal customer for the tool because he owns an SEO agency, and he, the value metric of the tool is kind of how many briefs per month you have. And he has around 200 to 300 briefs per month, which is a lot, right? And he's basically our ideal customer that knows the pain and has the biggest pain, and he helps us improve the product, but also he helps us market it to his own audience, that is a lot of SEO agency owners themselves or just people interested in SEO, because that's kind of the audience that he's built up around it. And I got that idea from, basically what TweetHunter did, right? So they went out and they were techies and they got a partner, like a ghostwriting partner or a marketing partner that helped them like scale. And I think that because I've, built up an audience myself, even though it's not huge, but I have like 3,000 something like that followers, I knew that could be a good way to get like some early stage sales and get like those first 1,000 customers, right? And I think that's why, instead of doing it myself, because I've noticed this takes a long time, like I've been doing it for a year and it's not something that goes overnight, right? I was like, yeah, we can do that ourselves, but obviously why not get someone else and that already has that and then incentivize them via like a profit share, right? Like we both have skin in the game and they're incentivized to make the thing grow because both will profit from it, right? So that's kind of the alignment that we set up, and it's been working pretty well. I think it's hard to attribute sometimes where the customers come from, but I'm quite sure that they are directly through him or someone else that has heard of us through him, right? So he's been doing Twitter, but also he has a newsletter basically that he's started setting up after this started, and then there he will kind of talk about SEO briefing related things, but also just as a featured tool, he'll have the free version of the tools, and those will consistently drive traffic as the newsletter grows, right?
Yeah, just to double click on that. So it's not a typical like affiliate partnership, but it's like a deeper partnership where he actually has like a profit share on the whole thing, and even like long term, or like how did you structure that if you're open to sharing, if you can share that?
Yeah.
Just to make it more tactical.
Yeah, I mean, it's not an affiliate deal. It is literally almost like, he's a founder of the company. And how we structure it is basically we have a longer term deal. I think it's 18 months with a classic just kind of, vesting period, and he will earn his share over time. That's kind of how vesting works, right? So there's a bit of a cliff to just have a trial period, and then there's like a vesting period. And then after that vesting period, you'll just get that profit share going forward. And basically, we did it that way because we also wanted him to be, like fully involved. And he also now has it in his profile, and he's like, yeah, I'm building SwiftBrief, right? And we wanted that to be not a classic like affiliate deal, more like a real joint venture almost, right?
This episode is brought to you by ReactSquad.io, the boutique React agency for SaaS startups. If your front-end team is overwhelmed and you need more hands on deck, go to ReactSquad.io and get a React.js developer embedded in your team in less than 7 days. Got it. And then switching gears a bit, because like AI is like everybody's talking about it right now, but I think especially in content creation, it's a big thing, a big topic. And let's just say you integrated ChatGPT and it's like some interesting experiences with that. Can you tell us a bit about like why you integrated AI into SwiftBrief, and then how it's currently like the honest truth of how it actually is to work with that tool right now, or with that integration?
So interestingly, GPT was already there, right? Like it was already integrated. It was not ChatGPT, but it was GPT-3 completion, which is a bit of a different API, but it, is kind of the same technology almost, just that it doesn't, I think, have shared context. So it doesn't build up context as you give it more information. So there was no real decision there, but I think especially the outlining part is quite, like we're not writing articles, but we're writing the outline for you. So that part lends itself pretty well to that kind of technology, because it's, something that is a common use case people also do with ChatGPT, right? What we do is we just basically give it more context and almost build like a super prompt with all the keyword related information and like frequently asked questions and like search engine results page data. So we just enhance that kind of prompt and give it a lot of information to make the outline more specific. For example, for what kind of content format is ranking, like what is like top 10 the most popular content format. Is it a listicle or is it just a blog post? And then that will kind of influence the outline, for example, right? So there's things we do with that. And I think, so there was no real decision. We just kept what was there and we updated it to be like ChatGPT API. And I think that's where AI can help the most, to do like the grunt work, the actual writing, because it's not like it's going to stay like that. People are going to, like the writers is going to like fill it out with more information, right? And enhance as they go. And I think that's, where we see ourselves right now. And yeah, with OpenAI, I guess what we were referring to is what we talked about before, but it's more as like, it is definitely noticeable that it's like a kind of beta stage technology, right? Like I think integrating with it is very simple, but we've had some problems recently around like the responses just being super slow, or just error messages that shouldn't be error messages and things like that. But I guess it's kind of like they're what DJ Khaled likes to say, like suffering from success. I think they're definitely having a lot to do on their end. So I kind of understand, but obviously that doesn't necessarily help me create a more stable product. But I think that's something what you should expect. I think when you integrate with something that's this unstable, more or less, right? Just because it's still quite early for that kind of stuff. But I hope that we can either work around that. So we're, doing some technical work now to migrate off of a provider that will limit or request times and things like that. So there's some technical things we can do to work around it, and we're working on it as we speak. And just identifying other things that are inside our control, right, that we can do to work around it. And then, I actually have a friend who launched a product on Product Hunt that was building on top of ChatGPT as well. And they had a 4-hour outage or something on that day when they launched. And I just heard their launch so bad. And it's just something, where I was like, okay, immediately thinking of what options are there to fall back to some other API in case that happens again, because it can and it will, right? The question is just like when. So that's definitely something I'm looking at. I'm not sure how expensive it is to set something similar up yourself via like open source tools or something, but that is probably where we have the most control. But obviously just from what I think how it works, right? I'm not an expert on that specific topic. I think it will require a lot of resources on our end. So if we're at a small scale, it doesn't make that much sense to, spin up a $1,000 per month server to make $50, So we'll have to wait a bit, but just different options that we're exploring to kind of work around this.
Yeah, and then again, like looking a bit more in the future, what's the plan going forward? Is it just like focusing and growing SwiftBrief? Is it potentially after those 18 months? Even like selling it and doing like the mini PE case, or what's your plan for it?
Honestly, the plan, so how I can just be transparent, but the plan was on like selling it, right? But I think the timeline that we set was a bit too optimistic in the beginning, because we're like, yeah, it's not going to take that long. And once we took the project over, we actually noticed, okay, there's a lot more to this that needs exploring. And the more we kind of think about it, the more, I guess, in the short term, it makes sense to just keep it for a bit longer and just kind of make it go to a stage where it actually makes sense to sell. And because we're not, like, we kind of want to dabble a bit with like a PE case, but we also could just be a holding company based on kind of, because we're bootstrapping and it's like our own money, we don't necessarily have outside incentives that are pushing us in a certain direction, right? Like if I would raise external money and the only way for the shareholder to make the return is if we sell in an exit scenario, then we're kind of locked into that path, right? Where we're okay, now we either sell or the shareholder doesn't get their return, which it's not going to make them happy, right? But yeah, we don't really have that. And because with this case, Flavio, he also has both, right? Like he has a profit share and he has like a share in the exit, the potential exit. So he gets incentivized either way, right? So it doesn't, to him, I mean, obviously we need to talk about it and align the shareholders there, but I think he's very open to explore both as long as, there is a return. And I think what we're going to be looking at is kind of like couple of factors. It's like, okay, you never want to be in a position where you have to sell, right? Because that's just like too much pressure and you have to do it. So I think we're trying to keep the options open, but we're going to look at like, how's the team motivated to keep this growing? How much can we grow it? Is it better, to look for some strategic partner with more resources that can take it to the next level? How motivated are we in keeping going? And then also just like, just a bunch of these factors. How much cash flow is it? Like, do we want to invest in something new and something bigger? Do we need to sell? Because I think with cash flow, you can necessarily unlock the next bet easily, because a lot of it will go back into the company itself growing it, or just the stakeholders like employees and things like that, right? So I think a lot of question marks really, and I think we're just kind of figuring it out as we speak. But initially, just the goal to kind of wrap this up. The goal was to sell it, to make that case. But now, as we onboard more stakeholders, we think that there might be a bigger opportunity, and that to go after that, it will require more time. And so we're, keeping it open.
But you're still going after like the portfolio building case, meaning building like a mini Berkshire Hathaway or like tiny capital in our industry, or do you just like dabble with it, and then if that sticks, you would fully focus on only like one specific SaaS, for example, SwiftBrief?
I think what we're doing now is we're trying that portfolio approach. I think that's something we tend to prefer in terms of, I like specifically me, I like to work on different projects, not necessarily at the same time, but like focus on different things and kind of switch it up. So I really enjoy that kind of portfolio approach. But I think even also in that case, we're open to double down on something if it clearly makes sense, where our limiting factor is the fact that we're not focused on it enough. But what I'm doing right now is in the background. So we have this venture studio, Paralect, good friends of mine from Twitter, not necessarily real life friends, we know each other, but we met on Twitter, and I'm getting them invested into basically the holding. And then they help us with like developer resources and like product execution resources. And we take more of a strategy seat, and so we can oversee different like 2 projects at a time. I think that's kind of our limit right now, where we really can focus. And then having help with, hands-on execution and developer and product designers and things like that. That's kind of what we're trialing, I would say. And with SwiftBrief, what's nice is that for all this stuff, it's just a sandbox for us, like we didn't spend 2 years upfront like building it. We got it. And now we're just, throwing stuff at it and see what sticks and what's like fun and what's like actually something we enjoy doing, because I think that's what I want to optimize for, right? It's like, what do I enjoy, doing, and what makes me kind of happy in a reasonable capacity, like I'm not gonna, I don't know, sit down and paint because that's not gonna make me any money, but you know what I mean, right? So I think that's kind of, just optionality, like keeping open as many options as possible. But if there is clear science, like we have regular reflection meetings and we have regular, like retros and goal setting meetings and things where we ask ourselves like, okay, should we commit more resources to this, or what should we do next? And I think as long as you have a process for doing that, I think that will help you, kind of just make sense of it, right? And if I'm not set to do a PE or do a holding, if this project takes off and it makes a lot of sense to just commit to it for 2-3 years and then sell it, right, or something like that, then we can do that, because that's the thing. Like, I'm trying to set it up in a way where we can do that because we have the options to do it and are not locked in a 20-year deal somewhere where now we only have one option, which is like doing everything at the same time, kind of like that, right?
So it's about freedom and flexibility, basically.
Yeah, I think we're really trying to optimize for that.
Awesome. I think that's a perfect point to wrap it up. Then, Stefan, thanks a ton again for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
If you like this episode, you will love our newsletter, The SaaS Operator by EarlyNode. Get actionable insights from SaaS veterans like Patrick Campbell, Christoph Jans, and Corey Haynes right into your inbox. A 5-minute read every Tuesday for free. Go to EarlyNode.com and subscribe for free.